Good morning, Alisal, and welcome to our last live stream PD for the 1920 school year. Or is it? No, it totally is. So happy June Friday. We're 1 week away from the ending of our school year. You made it. It's June. It's the end of the first week of June. Are you excited? Are you super happy? Can you believe we got it all the way there? So coming back from, let's just get right into it. Coming back from last week, we had, over the last 2 weeks, we had 2 digital citizenship academies, or Academia de Ciudadanía Digital, one English, one Spanish. And I think they were big successes. They were both streamed out over the district Facebook Live account. And here were the flyers for the last one. We would like to recognize the following educators who have become Common Sense media certified educators as part of that process. There was an academy for teachers that was led by George Lopez, Ben Cogswell, and had all these great participating teachers in it. And you can see on screen there all these digital citizenships, digital citizens, and they could be called digital kings and queens. So we wanted to give a shout out and recognition to all of our new Common Sense certified educator cohort. We're very proud of them, and we know with all the things we've been through and all the things that we have yet to face, makes us that much more Alisal strong. So congratulations to all those people. If you see those folks today, give them well, I guess you wouldn't see them in person, but give them a virtual high five. Okay. We announced last week that the awesome Celia Salinas Garcia had been working very diligently to put in chapters on YouTube. And I think we might have even showed you, so you wouldn't have to wade through a whole one of these 2-hour live stream PD videos. You could just jump right to the thing. Well, if you've been to Google Bootcamp and you've seen our presenter, Ariana Flewelling, talk about how they're constantly changing YouTube and there's a big user interface change, and she calls it YouTube puberty. Well, we are having issues related to the YouTube puberty. So what Celia had been doing is, here on the live stream PD page, when you click here, you can watch it live, but if you actually click the YouTube icon there, and I'm going to pause the video, there were, along this red bar, it was broken up into sections. And we promise it worked. It totally worked. And then Celia checked it last week and it was just gone. However, if you come here into the description, these time signatures that she put, which is how it was working before, these still do work. So for example, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Let's say you wanted to get here into talking about fluency and comprehension assessment, and you see that's at 22 minutes and 28 seconds. If I just click onto that, so it jumps the video. You can see the time signature. It jumps the video right to where you want to go. So that should still be useful. The caveat here is that it doesn't work when they're embedded here. You can get to the YouTube link for all the ones that have been put up to YouTube by clicking on it. And then I'm going to pause that. And then down here in the lower corner, you see the word YouTube. And if you click on that, it opens it up into YouTube. And then if you go into the description, show more, for example, if you wanted to look at the problem set here, you could click on that and it jumps you right to exactly where that starts in the video. So as soon as we figure out, or maybe as soon as YouTube figures out how to fix itself, or whatever their new procedure is, we will let you know. But until then, just to know that if you're reviewing any of the live stream PDs, you can still use the jump feature on YouTube to get to the time signatures, so you don't have to wade through the entire thing. So coming next, coming in your email today from me, we have some surveys that we would like your help in distributing to our students and also to our parents. So they're regarding remote instruction, and for the parents, we would like to gather some stakeholder data on reopening. So this is what they look like, and you'll notice that in the email, I just gave you the links that you can plop right into Seesaw or plop right into Google Classroom, or if you use Remind or anything, any way that you're connecting with students and parents, we're going to ask you to go ahead and send them through those channels. Multiple channels would be great, and it is also totally okay for parents to use their kids' Chromebooks to take these surveys. So again, the email will come today. A few and it will have the links. You could just copy those links, drop them into whatever channel that you want to do. A few clarifications. The student survey is for 4th through 6th only, just like the LCAP student survey is 4th through 6th only. So TK to 3rd grade teachers, you don't have to worry about that at all. 4th through 6th grade teachers, please do send that out. And if you wouldn't mind sending it like maybe this week, if you still have time with your kids. I know today's not generally a direct instruction day, but multiple times wouldn't hurt. We would really appreciate that. The parent survey is for all parents, all of our current parents. So that is TK to 6th grade, and that survey is available in both English and Spanish. And the parent surveys will be posted on the LSL district webpage. If you have a really active and updated school website, I know the Monabella and Chavez both have really active remote instruction school websites. Feel free to post it there as well. We would really, really appreciate that. Thank you very much for helping us. And again, that email, this mouse is biting me. That email won't come to you until 11 o'clock today. So don't worry about it until 11.
Josh?
Okay. Yeah.
Just for clarification, sorry, you misspoke earlier. We postponed our Spanish Digital Citizenship Academy due to, probably what we felt were other voices that needed to be heard, more important because of what's going on in our nation. So we will be postponing that, and that will be taking place at a future time.
I apologize. You're right. So we don't have a definite date for folks then yet?
Not yet, Josh.
Excellent. So keep an ear out for that and an eye on your email, and I'm sure we will bring that. So if you have parents who did still want to participate in the Spanish language, Academia de Ciudadanía, Dr. Hernandez has really been working on me, Ciudadanía Digital, then tell them it wasn't canceled, it was just postponed, and it will be coming. Okie dokes. Thank you for catching that, George. I appreciate it. Okay, and that's it for the opening. As we say every week, or at least I say every week, any help that you need, please send it, not directly to George, Celia, or I. Please send it to edtech@lsl.org. That way it goes to the whole department, and it doesn't get lost in all the other email that we have to be looking at. And remember, you can check the EdTech Weekly for the Google Meet office hours. So first up, we have SEL and Remote Instruction Part 2 with Alexandria Dominguez. Alex recorded hers earlier. She will be on and available for questions at the end, but to begin with, she recorded it probably for her ease and for yours. So I think what I'm saying is she's not presenting this live, so if you need something zoomed in or slowed down, we can't do that because it's already recorded, you see. Okay, so I would say take it away, Alex, but it's take it away, Alex, who's been pre-recorded.
Good morning and congratulations. Bottom of this screen is your bit.ly link for any questions.
You know what, folks? I'm going to restart that because I muted. And so give me 1 second. I'm going to change how I present this to make my life easier, to make your lives easier. So better for everyone. That's where we're going with this. Thank you for bearing with us.
that you may have for this presentation. It's going to be on the shorter side for the live stream, so we're saving our questions till the end. But if you have a question, go ahead and type those in, because Sally and George are manning those, and we'll share with them when the presentation is over. Good morning. My name is Alexandria Dominguez, and I am your Early Learning TOSA. You can find me at alexandria.dominguez@alisol.org. Yes, my title is Early Learning TOSA, but everything I present today is applicable and adaptable all the way preschool through 6th grade. So just be aware, there is something for you in here. Today's agenda, we're going to talk about social emotional read alouds. We're going to talk about mindful breathing. After the last presentation, I had a couple teachers let me know that those are helpful, so I got some more for us. We're going to discuss the end of the year for this school year and the beginning of next school year. And we are going to have some suggestions and ideas that would be good social emotional strategies for your class. And then always at the end, I like to include resources so that
Sorry about that, folks. My bad.
Good morning and congratulations on another week of remote instruction. Access to their instructional materials, and then do they have the skills for online and remote learning, which I know you guys are working and working very, very hard at. Moving along into our agenda, we're going to talk about social emotional read alouds. Typically, social emotional read alouds can be done with any book, chapter book, picture book, any book. When you are reading a book with a social emotional focus, you are focusing in on the emotions of the characters, the motivations, the personalities. And if you are reading a picture book, you're going to be looking at those faces in the illustration and pointing out certain emotions and how they show up in different people, in different faces, in different illustrations. The two that I have here today are a special type of social emotional read aloud. It is called either a social story or a social narrative. The reason that these are important is because they front load information, scenarios, and environments for our kids. They are very purposefully simple and repetitive. They are intended to be read multiple times, just like when you think about reading to a toddler, how you read the same book over and over and over again. This is the same way. One of the books down there is Bono the Monkey. Now, Bono the Monkey in a first grade preschool TK classroom will be read day after day because it's important information that our students need to know, and it's really good to read it multiple times. So these types of read alouds help normalize new situations. So before COVID, you would see this for students for going to the dentist or going to the doctor or going on a long trip or going on an airplane, so that they understand the order of events, what is expected of them, what to expect from the adults, and knowing what's coming. By knowing what's coming, it reduces fear and anxiety, because we're acknowledging that there's changes, but with this social narrative, it's in a less threatening way. It may be a character in the book, or just the fact that it's a book and not themselves doing it is less threatening. Okay, our first one that I'm going to share is down here. It is Bono the Monkey at Home, and it comes to us from Ms. Rodriguez, TK teacher at Frank Paul. So let's go ahead and pop this open and see what she has.
Bono the Monkey Learns at Home. Written by Mrs. Rodriguez. Pictures by Lupita Rodriguez. Bono the Monkey had to learn at home, but he didn't know the rules. He didn't listen to his mom or dad. No, no, Bono. You need to listen to your mom and dad. He didn't want to do his homework. No, no, Bono. You need to do your homework to make your brain strong. He talked and yelled all the time. No, no, Bono. You need to use a quiet voice.
Okay, I'm not going to play the whole thing there, but you can see already that it was a repetitive, that it was giving new information, new rules. And we can see that this is very similar to Bono the monkey at school, that this is Bono the monkey at home. Now you may be a little concerned, like, oh no, that seemed very negative. Well, Bono the monkey then learns to behave correctly, and he gets lots of praise at the end of the book. So you can see that our students are learning the new rules of staying at home. I would also challenge you guys that, you know what, we can have Bono the monkey in COVID-19. And what does that mean for school? Does he maybe need to wear a mask? Does he need to wash his hands a lot? So that brings me into something that I made, which is 2 social stories that are very adaptable. It's a slides presentation that I'm sharing with you that I would love for you to edit and change and make better. But it's a base here for you. So we can see this top one, school is starting soon. When we go back to school, things will be different. Not everybody will go back at the same time. Some rules will change. We will have to wash our hands a lot. We will need to work hard to not touch our faces. We will need to wear face masks. We wear face masks to protect ourselves and others. We can give air hugs and air high fives. We will stay 6 feet apart from others. The school will need to be cleaned a lot. When we go back to school, things will be different. We are doing this together. So you can see that it's, again, repetitive, and I made it totally editable because we don't know exactly what we are going to return to and what the rules will be. So you can change the pages as you so need, or as we so need, as our district lets us know more information about how we will be returning. There is one more. So there's a clear side and then another one. This is, I thought, a little bit older. And it doesn't include my Bitmoji, but it does include visuals. And so last year we went home to be safe. We worked hard and did our best on the computer at home. We even got to see our teachers in Google Meets. Soon we will be able to go back to school. We will have new teachers and new friends in our classes, like the beginning of every new school year. But some things will not be the same this year. So I put this page in because we want to remind them that, yes, they're going to have a new teacher. Yes, it's going to have new kids in class, but that's not something new. That's something that we do every single year. And so it's not something that we need to be especially concerned and worried about. That's something that's normal, and we can work our way through it. We want to acknowledge their fears, but we also want to let them know that we can talk about it, that we can help them manage those feelings. We don't want to minimize their feelings either. I included this page. Some friends will not come back to school on the same day and time. You can see I have a clock here, and I also have a calendar over here because we don't know, is it going to be AM, PM? Is it going to be different days? We don't know. Are they all going to come at the same time? Maybe you don't even need this page. I don't know right now. Always, we will need to wash our hands often. And it's why to clean off any germs. We will need to wear face masks to help keep everyone safe. Again, I don't know if that's going to be the case, but it's here in case it is. I really like this one. Your parents will leave you at the gate and you will walk with your teacher or by yourself to your classroom. You will be brave and say goodbye with a big smile. Most likely parents and adults will not be on campus unless they are staff members. So I wanted to include this because that's really important. So this might be something that you want to share before they return physically to school. So whether they return physically to school in August or if they return at another time, this would be a good one to share with them before so. Page talking about playground equipment because we don't know what we're going to have to do with that. and social distancing. And then again at the end, we talk about we will go back to school and some things will be different, but we will do this together. Okay, so again, those are shared with you because they are editable and they are changeable, and you can adapt them to your grade level, and you can adapt them to however your school, the rules that they need. Moving on to our second part, we're going to talk about mindful breathing. Now, I am not able to get my face on this screen. Not sure why, but that's okay. So we have 5 different strategies here. We're going to talk about them. They come to us from Cosmic Kids Yoga. And so we're going to start with hot air balloon. With the hot air balloon, you're going to cross-legged as possible. I'm sitting on a chair, so not possible. You're going to cup your hands around your mouth. You're going to breathe in through your nose deeply. And as you blow out, you're going to blow out through your mouth, and you're going to move your hands out like you're blowing up a big balloon. So let's go ahead and breathe in through our nose, out through our mouth. Go ahead and leave your hands there. Breathe in again. Move your hands further out. Again, another breath, and move your hands further out. As they get all the way out, you can go ahead and rock. And this is a soothing breathing for children. The benefit of the hot air balloon is that it's very relaxing. Our next one is a dragon fire breath. Dragon fire breath builds strength and heat inside of your body, and it is a good energizer. So you're going to take your fingers and you're going to interlace them. You're going to put them together, and you're going to put them underneath your chin. Underneath your chin, and your elbows are sticking straight out horizontally. Now, you're going to go ahead and breathe in through your nose, and your arms are going to go up. And when you breathe out, your arms are going to go down, and you're going to breathe out through your mouth, and you're going to go. Let's try that together. Interlock your fingers, arms straight out, elbows straight out. Breathe in through your nose, elbows go up. As you breathe out, elbows go down. Breathe in, elbows go up, elbows go down. So you're kind of flapping your elbows like they're your dragon wings. And you're making fire with your mouth. Our next one is a tumble dryer. This is a little bit hard to imagine, but go ahead and take your index fingers and point them straight up. Now you're going to point them at each other, not quite at each other. This goes well after wishy-washy washerwoman washes her clothes. So you're going to do a tumble dryer. You're going to put your fingers, and so they can tumble over each other. They're going to make circles around each other. So you're going to inhale through your nose, and then as you breathe out through your mouth, you're going to blow on those fingers, and you're going to make them spin around each other. So let's breathe in and out. And the faster you breathe out, the faster that the tumble dryer can spin. Breathe in one more time and tumble dryer. Okay, I hope I described that well enough. All right, our next one is called a tongue tube. So I have a picture of a straw there because you're going to try to curl up your tongue like a straw. If you can't curl up your tongue like a straw, then you can go ahead and make a big toothy grin. All right, so the benefit of this one is that it's a cooling effect, and it refreshes your throat, and it's very cleansing. And it's kind of weird because the other ones we breathed in through our nose and out through our mouth. This time we're going to breathe in through that tongue straw and out through our noses. That's how it refreshes the throat. So let's breathe in through our tongue straw or our smiley teeth, out through the nose, in through the tongue, out through the nose. And I hope you guys can hear me breathing on the other side. Our last one is a bumblebee breath, and this one is really neat. The benefit is that it's very calming, it's very peaceful, and it causes this really cool, comforting, resonant sound inside your head. And it can be done with the eyes closed to be even more relaxing. But to start with, you can go ahead and leave your eyes open. What you're going to do is you're going to breathe in through your nose. And when you breathe out, you're actually going to put your fingers in your ears and hum. So let's all do that right now. In through your nose, put your fingers in your ear, and now hum. I hope you heard that really cool sound. If you didn't, let's do it one more time. Breathe in through your nose and hum. All right, those are all techniques that your kids can take home with them and they can do. And I will go ahead and try to make a video of myself doing it and put the links in here as well before you guys get the presentation. All right, moving to the good stuff. All right, we're getting to the end of the school year, getting really, really close. So I have just a few recommendations. Obviously not required, but good ideas. And if you have something else going on already, that's wonderful. And if you want to share with me what you've done, that would be wonderful as well. So go ahead and let's go ahead and look at these bullet points. And let's start with the first two. Could you invite future teachers to your Google Meet? So let's say I'm a second grade teacher. Could I invite some of the third grade teachers into my Google Meet with my second graders right now so that they get to meet them? I bet I could. And let's say again, if I'm a second grade teacher, could I go to the Google Meet of the first graders and say hello? So that would be really nice. That way they get to know your face. They get to know who you are. We don't know who exactly all of the teachers are going to be next year potentially, but you know, getting to know one or two, and that's a good thing. And also maybe sharing expectations for the upcoming school year. That would be really helpful, and then the kids would be really excited to meet you. Number 3 on there are awards and certificates for students. So acknowledge that technology growth of your students, but don't forget your parents. They have been doing a lot of work too. In the lower grades, they've been sitting beside the students as they are in their Google Meets. For older grade students, they're checking on their work and making sure that they're getting something turned in. And that's difficult. Helping their kids get onto all of these platforms is very difficult. And parents will get really excited to get that little bit of acknowledgement. And you will be paying it forward to your students' next year teacher. If your parents and the families are feeling happy and acknowledged by you, this year's teacher, they're going to be more receptive to next year's teacher. So go ahead and push that forward and ask the teachers from the grade below you to do the same. That way we can end the year on a positive note with parents. To end the year on a positive note with the kids, they're going to want some celebrations, right? Maybe all of these are virtual. Don't mind you, these are all virtual. Could you have an end of the year picnic where they take their Chromebooks out onto their grass, if they have grass? Could you sit out in your backyard and have a picnic with them where there's no real agenda, just conversations? Could you have a dance party? And maybe play dates with the littler ones so that you're not having as big of a group, maybe 3 or 4, 5 or 6 kids in those celebrations, depending on how you want to do it. The end of the year is also a time for reflection. So I want to note there that it's underlined because it is a link. All right. So reflecting on their growth, on their new skills. One that I heard really good, that was really funny, was to tell the teacher something that they did not know. So this included things that the teacher maybe didn't know about the student, but also maybe something that the teacher didn't know about the classroom. Like so-and-so is rolling on the floor or something happened. And it's really just a good way. They're reflecting on it. They're letting you know something, but also you can reflect on that. Because did you know that that person was on the floor? Is there an opportunity for you to make a change physically to your classroom? Maybe so you can see more of the classroom? I don't know. So it's just a time for you to reflect. The link there is some reflection questions. So you might want to throw these out, especially for the older kids. These would be really good reflection questions. It's all about what they've learned over the year and the relationship they built with you. It's a good way to reflect and to close out the relationship that you're having with them in a positive way. Sharing some summer activities is a really nice way to finish out the year. Maybe some bingo boards, an act of kindness chart, giving your kids some links to at-home art activities, maybe some choice boards of online read alouds or directed draws. Share those links. Our kids might not actually be able to find them on their own. So sharing a few that you have found, sharing potentially the link to somebody else that made the choice board. And that way they've got a lot of options during the summer. I was thinking when I wrote this about my last day of school every year. And at the end of the school day, on the last day, I give every student a hug. And I say goodbye to them. And we high five. And each individual kid gets to say goodbye. So how do you do that in remote instruction? Maybe an individual Google Meet with each kid to say goodbye and to give those air hugs to each other and to just close something out, to close it out, I think is a really good idea. Yes, it'll be a lot of time. Just like at the end of the year, giving that last hug took about 20, 25 minutes to give everybody a hug, but it was important. And then my last one is leave open a form of communication with you. Is that your phone number? Is that your email? Is that some Google Meets that you host once a week or once every other week? I don't know. It's up to you, but leaving that there and leaving that possibility for students will make them feel more comfortable and to know that there is someone out there that they can reach out to. All right, getting ready for next year. Again, I do not know what next year is going to look like at the beginning of the year, just like you don't right now. And I'm sure that we will be finding out more information. Potentially, we heard more information this morning before this pre-recorded presentation was recorded. So just know this information may be a little old, or it may be just perfect. I don't know yet. Okay. This picture up on the left looks up on the right looks a little scary, doesn't it? Let's imagine that we were going into the hospital and someone that was taking care of us looked like that. Now let's imagine we were kids. Oy. Now, I don't expect that when teachers go back to school that we will look like this. That is not why I showed it. I am not promoting that. But what I am promoting is what that arrow is pointing at. I expect to go back to school with a mask on. Little kids are not going to know what I look like. So if I can make a large picture, similar to a badge, but a big picture with my name on it and laminate it so I can put it on myself every day so that they can know what is behind that mask. So a smiling picture so they know who I am and that they know that that's me, I think is a really good strategy. Our next one is a flat teacher activity, and you may have seen that out on social media. So if you can think of the book Flat Stanley, he's a character that gets squished by a corkboard, and he is now flat, and he can get mailed all over the world, and he gets to go on adventures because he's flat, and it's really cheap for him to go around the world. So you can send, just like me, I have my Bitmoji self. You can print those out. Maybe laminate them however you want to do it and send it out to the kids. For the older grade kids, maybe your flat teacher is going to be their bookmark as a reminder for good behaviors during reading and like a little reminder to read. Or in the lower grades, I have been seeing these flat teachers go on adventures. So go out into the backyards with kids and go and pick tomatoes with the kids, and they go to reading time with the kids, and the students are really excited to share where the flat teacher goes. And it's a way for them to connect to you. I think back when I was a child and my dad had to travel a lot for work. And at one point he was gone for about 8 weeks. And I carried around a picture frame with his picture in it. This is the same for them. You are one of the important adults in their lives. So now they can carry you around. You may want to give that to this year's kids so they can carry you around in the summer. But especially if we're starting remote next year, you want to go ahead and give them a version of you so that they can get to know you better and think about you. For the beginning of the year, having private Google Meets with the student and the family so that they get to know you, and then you can explain your remote instruction, your specific classroom expectations, and any potential changes that are coming because of COVID-19. Like parents having to leave students at the gate, like having to wear masks, whatever it ends up being. I also recommend having some welcome videos, maybe put that out so that they can access it before school. And I want you to share something about you, something kind of personal. Do you love pizza? Do you have a dog? Do you have kids? Having that personal connection helps parents and families and kids to connect to you and have more buy-in. So if they can know you as a human being, it's going to be a little bit easier. They make that connection. And then hopefully with maybe those private Google Meets with the families, you can get to know your students better. The next one is a Kahoot about your classmates' activity. So usually at the beginning of the year, we talk about all about me and our class gets to learn about each other. Well, that's going to be harder if we start remote or with whatever hybrid model. So here is a link. It's a link to a Google form that you can then turn into a Kahoot, and a Kahoot can be done during a Google Meet. And it is basic information like what's your favorite food, what's your favorite color, all different types of questions like that. But there's a link there already made for you. You can send it out to the kids and have them respond, and then maybe have one a day or one per meet. Next, small group play dates for social emotional and making friends. This is really good for the lower grade students. It might feel nerve-wracking or anxiety-inducing to have to go to a Google Meet with kids you already know. Now let's imagine you're going to a Google Meet with a teacher you don't know and kids you don't know, and potentially like 30 kids in that meet. That would be very stressful. I think I can feel it right now, like, ooh, in me. Now for kids, it's going to feel the same. So what if we could start off slow by having your private meet with them so they get to know you, and then move it to, say, 2 other kids. And now they get to meet and make friends with those 2 other kids. And then slowly you get more and more kids. And you will be joining your play groups together so that you can have a whole class. Or you may remain in small groups, your choice. The last one there is self-regulation games. Self-regulation games can be done during a Google Meet or even in person. Absolutely in person, because the ones I think about are the ones I did in person as a child. So links to some self-regulation games are on the resources page. Self-regulation games are games like freeze dance, Simon Says, do this, do that, like touch your shoulder, touch your head, cover your eyes, touch your nose. Something where they're doing multiple steps. Then another one would be magic word games. So say a teacher says a magic word and then the kids have to do something. So if I said bear in the middle of the class, they'd have to go roar. And so that they wait all day long for you to say the word bear, and then they get to go roar. Lots of fun. And it's a regulation game that they're remembering what they need to do. There's also a game called Packing for a Picnic. Typically, this is done in class, and it's done in a circle. And the first person, and this can be done all different ways. It doesn't have to be packing for a picnic, but it's where the first person says, I am, say their name, and they say something that they're bringing with them. So it would go, let's say person 1, I am person 1, and I am bringing a blanket. Now, person 2 is going to say, I am person 2, and I am going to bring a blanket and a chair. Person 3 go, I am person 3. I'm going to bring a blanket, a chair, and a picnic basket. and it goes around that group, and seeing if they can remember causes a lot of laughing and fun. Moving along, we have some resources here. We have from Common Sense Media, 30 fun ways to celebrate the end of the school year from a distance. The next one is COVID-19 free ebooks from the New York City Library System. This was on remoteinstruction.org. I found it there, but I was amazed and I wanted to go ahead and highlight it for everybody because Spanish and English, they have social emotional books, but they also have social narrative books like the ones that I described earlier. The next link, number 3, is the executive functions games. So self-regulation games as well would be another way to say it. Then we have following the Monterey County Office of Ed, their distance learning webpage for social emotional, some links for First 5 California, as well as CSEFL. CSEFL was that great one that we shared last time that had faces for you to be able to use to make your emotions chart. We also have PBS Learning Media. They have really good stuff, and it's new stuff all the time. And then additional companies. So now we're going to go ahead and say, I'm going to say thank you. And in just a second, we're going to link over and we're going to turn this video off so that you can ask questions. So again, here is the bit.ly link, bit.ly/AUSD, capital L, live, capital PDQ. And I love to hear your questions. Thank you.
All right.
So, I know George and Celia have been monitoring the questions. Take it away, George and Celia.
All right, Alex, thank you for that. So I know that there's a couple of questions that come in that were very specific, and we wanted to let you know that we will be sending those to Alex, and Alex will be contacting you directly. So thank you for that, Alex. Question with regards to your slides, just for clarification, Alex had a bit.ly at the beginning of her presentation, but that bit.ly goes to the question form, which is what, how we're getting your questions on here. We will be giving you a link to the actual presentation, so you have access to all the links that Alex shared. As soon as this live stream is processed, we will get that out to you. So thank you, Ms. Susmar, for asking that question. Go ahead.
Can I go ahead?
Go ahead, Alex.
Sorry, I do want to mention, excuse me, with the breathing techniques, I was able to make a video of myself doing it that you can actually see. So once you get the slides presentation later on the website, there will be a link on that page that has video. So in case you didn't know what the tumble dryer was, you had no idea what I was talking about, you can see me doing it.
Great, thank you. And then the other question that we have on here is, the book that you created about, so the teacher asked about, if we could remind teachers, how to make a copy so you can edit that depending on what our situation is like. So what we've done, Alex, is we've actually gone into your slide deck and made a forced copy. So that means that when you click on that link for the COVID-19 social studies, you will be, you will automatically have your own copy that you can edit. So yeah, we figured that's one way to take a step away where you have to make a copy to edit. So it will be a forced copy. You make a copy for yourself, and you'll be able to edit it as you see fit, like Alex said.
Awesome, thank you.
That is all the questions that we have. Nothing else has come in, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
I think we're going to go into a break, if I'm not mistaken, Josh.
Yeah, we are. We're gonna have, I believe it's a 10-minute break, and then when we come back, George and Celia will be presenting on end of the year cleanup procedures. You have your end of the year close down procedures for your physical classroom, and those definitely exist in a digital classroom, and especially in a year where we've gone full remote like we have recently. So please rejoin us in about 10 minutes, and George and Celia will walk us through the end of the year close down and cleanup procedures.
Welcome back, everybody. George here. So Celia and I are going to go ahead and work, just like we clean up our classroom at the end of the year, there is some things that we need to consider and do as we close our digital classrooms. So the link is there at the bottom. Again, at the end of the live stream, we will make sure that you have access to this presentation along with the recording of this. So I'll give you a few more seconds to go ahead and write that down. It's bit.ly/ALISAL with a capital A, clean up with a capital C, and up with a capital U. Little quick note, we wanted to inform you that we have published our last EdTech Weekly for the year. So we will not be having one on this upcoming Monday, but we did want to share with you also a change in our office hours. We are planning to have office hours on Monday in case you have any questions or with regards to what we are presenting here today. And while we won't have office hours on Wednesday and Friday, if you need additional support, please email us directly either to the EdTech account, and we will definitely create appointments for you if you need those. But there won't be any set hours besides on Monday. The link will be the same as it's been in the past 6-8 weeks. So that will not change. In fact, perhaps on Monday we will go ahead and send that out, just the link in case anybody needs that link one more time for our office hours. So hopefully that has given you enough time to write the link. And again, we will provide this to you again later. So let's go ahead and get started here. All right, so today's topics, we're going to go ahead and set the scene. Just think about why we are doing this. We're going to go ahead and discuss what closing procedures you want to do for Google Classroom, and also some things that you will need to do for Seesaw, just so that we can go ahead and close up our digital classrooms and be prepared for next year. We're going to go ahead and start with the scene. As we do every year, I think this is something that we as teachers, we reflect on how we, how do we do this year? What went well? What didn't do well? What challenges did we face? So we can prepare for next year. And we want to make sure that we do the same thing when it comes to Seesaw and Google Classroom. What worked? What didn't work? Were there any procedural challenges that we faced? And because we went into remote instruction and learning, in the middle of the year, we were definitely at a disadvantage. So hopefully now that we've gotten some more training, some more procedures in place, next year as we start should be smoother, especially if you take into account these things that we will be sharing with you today. So again, we'll reflect on this, and then we will go ahead and talk about how we will start next year. So I'm gonna go ahead and have Celia take over, and she will start with Google Classroom.
Perfect. So we're going to focus on our two main tools. And so we're going to start with Google Classroom. And we've set it up just kind of as like things to consider, maybe tips, just so we make sure that we have everything straightened out. So we should be able to get through this fairly quickly. So starting off with Google Classroom, I hope you all remember that a couple weeks ago, I mentioned a to-do list in Google Classroom. And so one of the most important things that you should be doing before we close out the school year is returning student work. And so you might wonder, like, why would I even bother to return it? But just as a little word, whenever students turn in an assignment in Google Classroom, the permissions and the ownership can get changed. And so it's just like a physical piece of paper. If a student physically turns in something to the teacher to grade and evaluate, the teacher is the only one who has access to that physical piece of paper. The same is true for an assignment in Google Classroom. As soon as a student turns in their work in Google Classroom, the student isn't able to edit it anymore. And so you're going to have to go through your assignments and return everything back to the students. So after you've graded, after you've evaluated in any way, shape, or form that you're doing, you need to make sure that you go back and return the student work. And so one of the ways to do that is with a to-do list that we mentioned a couple weeks ago. So you're going to click on the pancakes and go to your to-do list. Click on the room that the Google Classroom that you're working with, and then you'll get a list of all your assignments similar to this one. What I want to call attention to is anything that says turned in. So any of the assignments that have something turned in, so I have 1 assignment turned in here, 15 turned in here, 1 over here, those have been turned in, but they also haven't been returned. So again, it's just like a piece of paper. They've given it to you, but you haven't done anything with it, which is why it's still coming up in your to-do list as turned in. Once you do return them, you would get this 3rd column that says returned. So for this assignment, there's 1 student who has turned it in and I haven't done anything with it. There's 13 who have the assignment, who probably haven't turned it in, and 5 that I have looked at and returned. So if you go to your to-do list, I want to call attention to those items that are turned in, but you haven't returned yet. You could also look at the actual assignment. And so if you look at the student submissions, you'll also get this little note under them saying, well, this student has turned it in, and this student has already received a grade for it, right? So even those little notes will change depending on what you've reviewed in your Google Classroom. Remember that you can also mark these assignments as reviewed. Once you return everything, you would go to the snowman and click reviewed, and they'll disappear from your to review list, but they'll just switch over to reviewed. Again, it's just a way to keep track of anything that the teacher needs to do in terms of organization, and then you'll be done with returning work that way. Another way you could return student work is the second option, which is why I titled it 1B. You can return student work from the gradebook itself. And so in this example, I went to the gradebook. Remember that you're just going to click grades up at the top. And if I go, this is a list of my students. The top is a list of the assignments. And so if I go to the assignment, this assignment, for example, we made a presentation on theme. I would go to the menu in the title and then click return all. And so again, if you've already done all of your evaluation and your grading and you just need to do the returning in bulk, I would probably recommend this way, so that you don't have to go one by one. I'm going to return this one. I'm going to return this one. Like, no, I'm just going to return all of the assignments for this one topic that I've assigned. So you can do it that way. So just make sure you're returning your student work before you close up the year. Tip 2, make sure that you're archiving your old classes. So if you know already that come the 11th, you're no longer going to be using your Google Classroom, please make sure you go in and archive it. And so on your main page, you're going to have different boxes here with all of the classrooms that either you're a teacher in or that you're a student in. You may only have one if it's just the one that you have for this year, but you may have a bunch of them. And so again, if you're just thinking ahead and you never archive these, your page could end up looking similar to mine, except that these are all current. You'll end up with so many classrooms that it just becomes an organization problem. Not to mention that once you go ahead and archive these old classes, they'll go away from your screen, but then students will also not be able to edit or add or manipulate the classroom in any way. They can't turn in assignments, they can't make any comments. And so just in terms of security and making sure that students are using the tools appropriately. If you already know you're not going to use it, I would say archive right now. Just do it. If you are going to be using your class over the summer, you're obviously free to do that. Just make sure that you do go ahead and get back to archiving once you're done with them. So I switched over to my Google Classroom right now, just to mention that the button's right there to archive. It's going to ask you, are you sure? You can go ahead and just say yes, go ahead and archive it. If for whatever reason you archive a class like I just did, and then you're like, wait, I actually wanted that back, or I clicked on the wrong one, you can access them over on the Pancake stack. You're going to scroll down, and there's right above the settings, you can go back into your archive classes. And so I have a bunch of archived ones. And so if I made a mistake here and I was like, hey, I actually need this one, I can go back into the menu and restore it. So even if you do end up archiving it, you could get things back. But again, it's just in terms of making sure that students have the correct access to everything, especially if you've turned off notifications to when students post or comment. If you don't archive those classes, then students are still able to do that. And so we've had sometimes in the past where students are doing that and they're not being monitored. So please keep in mind to go ahead and archive as soon as possible. The other option to cut students' access essentially from the class is to unenroll them from the class. And so to do that, the difference here is if you archive a class, like I showed you, it just kind of disappears from your list. It's still kind of there, right? I could go back into that archived folder. So can students. If I archived a classroom, they can go into their archive folder and they can look at all the stuff in there. They could look at the assignments, they could look at comments, but they can't add anything to it. In this option for 2B, you're unenrolling students completely from your class so that they're no longer going to have access to the classroom at all. So they won't even be able to look at the assignments. They won't be able to look at anything in the classroom. They'll still have their work in their drive. They just won't have access to the Google Classroom as you've set it up. If you wanted to go that route, you would go up to people in your menu. You're going to have a list of teachers. You'll have a list of students down here at the bottom. And so all that you need to do is make sure you click all of your students, go to actions, and then remove all the students. It'll ask you to confirm, but that would be the other option, again, to just secure, keep everything secure and close out your classroom and have students with the right access to them. Number 3, here's another nifty little option. You may or may not want to take this. Again, these are all just considerations, but there's an option to copy a class. And so again, if you have a list of your classes, if you go over to the menu, the 3 little dots, the snowman, right above the archive button is a copy button. And so you might be wondering, why in the world would I want to be copying my classroom? Well, let's say, probably going to use this one, that when you click copy on a classroom, it'll ask you to name it. And so maybe, again, thinking ahead to what you need to start preparing for next year, regardless of what that actually is going to look like, because those details are still being ironed out. But maybe I title it with the year. Everything else is optional, so that's all that I'm going to do. So you're going to click copy class, and it's going to take a couple of seconds, because what this option does is it copies all of your assignments, all of your materials. You see here, it's still kind of grayed out, but it's saying that it's creating this new class, which is a copy of my 1921. And it like literally duplicates everything that you've done inside of the Google Classroom for you automatically. So I'm going to go ahead and click into it now that it's done. I'm going to go into classwork, and you'll notice that all of these assignments that I have here by topic were the ones that I had already made in my last year's class. And so that I don't have to go through the trouble of redoing all of these assignments. So for example, if I had this Monday writing assignment, do you see it already has a template attached to it? It's already made the assignment. So again, it's just one of those considerations. It does create all of the work in draft form. And so drafts, that's also why they're grayed out, because they're not live. Drafts are there for you as a draft. And so whenever you're ready to get like assign this actual piece of work that you've already put together last year, you would just click on the assignment and then click assign, and that would make it live. But you'll see like it already puts it in the right category. It already has the points that I set up last time. So again, it's one of those organization things that if you're putting work into keeping things organized as you're going with any of your classes, then all of the work that you do for this one, for example, right? I could essentially just copy all of that work that I've done for one Google Classroom and duplicate it into a new one for next year. I'm not going to worry if you do end up doing that. You're not going to worry about adding the students yet because we don't obviously have class lists. But again, it's just an option for you. If you, it could be really powerful. Again, if you're setting up your assignments and setting up all these resources ahead of time, and then every year you're just going to go to your existing one and make a copy, and then you can make your assignments go live as you go. That's an option. 4, hopefully you've all learned that anytime you make a Google Classroom, you also create a Google Calendar, which keeps track of like assignment due dates and time. Like it automatically does that for you. If you go into classwork, there's a button straight from your Google Class that will send you to your Google Calendar. And so you can get through it from there. You can get through it straight from your regular like calendar.google.com. This is what it looks like for me. And so anytime you make a new Google Classroom, you're going to get a calendar. Over here on the left, there's a list of my calendars. You'll notice that this one, Homeroom 1819, is the same name as my Google Classroom because this is the calendar for my Google Classroom. Except that, again, with time, you're going to end up with a very long list of all of your Google Classroom calendars. And so, again, just as a organization tip, at the end of the year, you don't necessarily need that calendar anymore because you're going to make a new Google Classroom and it'll make a new calendar for you. And so if you want to clean this up, maybe you could just check it off, but then it still stays on the list. I don't like that. So instead of just hiding it, there are 2 things you could do. If you want to just delete it entirely so that students don't have access to it, you don't have access to it, you're going to go into the menu, the 3 dots, go into settings and sharing. Oops, sorry. And then you're going to get a bunch of settings for the calendar, but you're going to need to scroll all the way down. And I feel like they put it down at the bottom to make it like super difficult for you to actually delete it because as you can see, the calendar will be permanently erased and nobody will be able to use it anymore. Again, because this is keeping track of due dates and events, you don't necessarily need it after the school year. So if you do want to end up deleting an actual calendar, you can go into the settings. It'll ask you to confirm again because it's a permanent delete, and then it'll be permanently deleted that way. So you could definitely do that to clean up your Google Calendar. I posted just this little screenshot to remind you how to get to it. Okay, my calendars, go to the 3 dots, go down to settings and sharing, scroll all the way down and click delete. Last but not least, I think this is my last one. Tip number 5 is about your Google Drive. And I mean, organizing your Google Drive could be its own thing in and of itself, but we're just thinking about like closing out the year. And so one of the things about Google Drive is that Google Classroom makes a folder inside of your Google Drive automatically, which is great. So you'll notice that in mine, I have one titled Classroom. If you use Google Classroom and you made a class, you're going to have one in there too that's automatically made. And then what Google does in its infinite wisdom is inside of that, then it makes a folder for each class that you've ever either been in or created yourself. And then inside of that, so if you can see, how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times 9, 45, 50. I have 50 folders in here. Again, eventually this can become a lot to organize. And so one of the tips that I've seen is maybe you go into this folder, the classroom folder, make a new folder, and maybe you're titling this archive, right? This is just you and your own organization. I'm even going to change the color because I want it to stand out. There it is. And so now that all these, like the 17, 18 Google Classroom that I just archived, I don't really need access to all these files. So maybe I drag it into the archive folder. I don't need that one. I don't need this one, right? I can just start cleaning this. Like, I don't need all this stuff, right? So again, this is just a little tip for you to make sure that things in your Google Drive are a little bit more clean and organized. The second tip about your Google Drive is kind of a tip and like kind of not a tip. Sorry, not sorry. I've heard a lot of people mention how, again, anytime a student turns in an assignment, it gets shared with you, right? That's part of Google Classroom and their workflow is changing those permissions for you automatically. So then there's no confusion. But what ends up happening is there's this little filter over here on the left, shared with me. Anything that students ever work on in your Google Classrooms will also end up being shared with you, right? Because you're the teacher and they turn in things to you. On top of like things that are being shared by your coworkers and your administrator and. So a lot of things end up under shared with me, like a lot, friends.
Gets messy.
Oh man, you don't even know. And so like I could scroll through a whole bunch of things, but the thing is that this little area here to share with me is just a filter. It's not a folder in and of itself. So like I can't make a folder in here to like try to start organizing things. It doesn't work that way. And so some people will try to get rid of the things that are like shared with you. So like this is obviously a student piece of work. And so if I wanted to just get rid of it from my drive, I could go ahead and delete it, remove it. But if they ever share it with you again, it's going to end up back in here. Or the next assignment that you have will also be shared with you. So like, I feel like this is just kind of one of those things where like, you can try to clean this up by removing things that are in here since they're not yours, but eventually you're going to have more stuff in there and it's kind of a never ending cycle. And so like, I've heard some people just try to give up on that particular section. I don't mess with it myself, but if you really want to, best of luck to you. That being said, I'm not sure if there are any pertinent questions.
We have some really great questions
before we move on to Seesaw.
So we are glad that you are, so attentive and paying attention on here. And a couple of you are actually on the same wavelength, so that's great.
Ooh.
So for those of you that have 6th grade students, the question is, will the returned work from Google Classroom still be available to students when they transition to 7th grade?
Ooh. I don't think that they would because we use, someone correct me if I'm wrong, because we use different local ID numbers than the high school district. Like the high school district uses their own ID numbers, which are different than our districts. And so I don't think that it would transfer over under the same account. Josh, if you would like to speak to the
yeah, I mean that you're partially correct there. I don't know about the local IDs, but I know the high school district, we're alisal.org and they're I think shusd .org, whatever the domain is. So part of the security of an education domain is ownership cannot be transferred to an account outside of the domain. So even when you return all that work, it is owned by, let's say 43210 at alisal.org as the student. But then when they leave, and I believe we suspend their account, they can't really transfer those files out of our domain. That's a security thing, so that people can't accidentally give away documents or files that are ours. However, what they can do is they can share. Oh no, wait, they're students, so we don't allow students to even share outside of the domain also, or to be shared into from outside of the domain. So there is a way that they can download them as either PDFs or I think like Microsoft files. But no, the work doesn't go with them because digitally there's no secure way to do that really.
Right. There were a couple more questions.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. So the next question, again, thank you, Ms. Marroquin at Loya for this. It says, if I am a co-teacher and somebody archives a class, do I lose access to that class?
Everybody does. As soon as it's archived, again, it goes into that archived list and no one can do anything to it. I mean, you can still look at it. You can, check all the comments and like scroll through everything, but you can't change it.
So if I can jump in here on archive, and I just going to put on my administrator hat here for a second. I know my camera's muted. I'm actually wearing a hat. But it's really important if you have allowed your kids to comment and post in the stream without teacher moderation in Google Classroom, then you really do need to archive it if you're not going to be actively monitoring it. So a lot of teachers who let kids post and comment in there pretty freely, especially in our upper grades, because they're developing those good online habits. And, especially during remote instruction, they're giving them a place, a protected place to be social with each other, a place where a teacher can monitor. But if you're not going to keep monitoring that, you really do need to archive the class so that students don't have that unsupervised space on our system.
All right, and I believe that was all the questions that we had with regards to Google Classroom. Just as a little side note, again, there's a couple of you that have very specific questions. We need a little bit more clarity as to what you are trying to do. So we will definitely email you once we are done here, just to get clarity, to make sure we are answering that question correctly for you. So be on the lookout for that if you did not hear your question answered in the live stream.
So we're going to pass it off to George now for Seesaw.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started here with Seesaw. And in some ways, this might be easier with Seesaw for those of you that are using Seesaw, but we do need to make sure that we are using Seesaw for schools in the correct manner. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing we want to do, and we've covered this already, but we need to go ahead and restate this. You need to check and see, are you using Seesaw for Schools? Because if you are using Seesaw for Schools, a lot of this work that happens in the back end will automatically happen. So to check that, what you want to do is you want to make sure that from your account, you want to go to the gear and you want to go to account settings. Once you get in there, you want to go to where it says manage subscriptions. You see this little arrow pointing to the right on here. If you click that, you are going to see subscription status Seesaw for Schools. If you see that, you are using Seesaw for Schools. So that's your so far so good.
Yay.
Okay, good step on there. The second piece you want to do is you want to make sure you're aware of is, are you connected to your schools? Again, in the same dialog box under your account, you want to go down to the bottom and you want to see if you are connected to your school. Here, as you can see, I am connected to Barden, so you want to look here. And just as a heads up, for those of you that may be moving school sites next year, you are able to change that, and you'll be connected to your new school. So just you don't need to do anything with regards to that. Just make sure that this year you are connected to your school. If you are not, you will get a dialog box there that says connect to school, and when you click on that, it'll go to a dialog box that will show all the schools and allow you to connect to the school which you are at. So those two things will be very helpful as we close out the year. And like I said, a lot of the closing out procedures for Seesaw happen on the back end and doesn't require a lot of work from the teacher side. So really important to keep that in mind. Now, if you have that set and you are set correctly, there are some tips on here for you that can be helpful as you, as we close out the year. Okay, number one, things to keep in mind is leave your classes as they are. Do not archive them. Do not delete them. I believe that you can't archive them anyway, but if for some reason there's a setting on somebody where they can, do not archive the class. Do not delete them. Archive will take place at the administrator level. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So again, please leave those alone. Leave the classes as they are. All right. Tip number 2 for you. All right. Make sure that your families are connected. I know we've been working really hard to get as many families connected as possible. You have one last opportunity to connect your families. And again, at the bottom right-hand corner, you go into your class, and at the bottom, you will see the family icons. If you want to give it one more shot and getting these families connected, this is where you will click to get the resource you need to connect your families. We will, at the end, we will give you some resources. If you've forgotten, what the process is and how to do this, we will share some resources at the end to kind of give you a reminder or retraining, or, sometimes we need to see it more than once as to how to add families. But yeah, we want to make one last effort to connect as many families as possible. And some of you have done a great job at some sites. So keep it up. Hopefully we can connect more families and get them involved in what's going on in our classrooms.
So, George, if the school year's over, why would we want to keep connecting families to Seesaw for Schools?
That was actually going to come up later on, Josh, but good question.
I know, but I'm making it more like a dialogue and fun.
Thank you. So what's happening is, what will happen is, once you connect a student to Seesaw, they will remain connected as long as they stay here in LSL. So we don't have to send these emails or these forms out to students to connect them again. So again, if they got connected last year in kindergarten, they will keep connected all the way through 6th grade, and the families will have access to all that work. Thank you, Josh, for making this more like a dialogue. I'm gonna move on here. Another tip that I think some of us do already, we do this in our physical classrooms, is we have our students kind of create some kind of folder of work that they're really proud of. You might want to consider creating a best of folder where a student or you can choose to put some of that work in there. And then this work will be available to the teacher next year as they move on to the next year. So it just, it's a little added bonus that really, can highlight work that a student is proud of, or things that you feel are exemplar for them. But, so creating a folder, and again, we have a resource for you that can remind you how to create a folder if you have, if you need additional support there. So creating a folder is a good practice, like we would do in our regular classroom. Okay. Notice that and call it whatever you want. My best work, my scholarly work. You can decide what that looks like and choose the color. All right. There's that tip. Tip number 4 on here. Please, please, please avoid these things. Don't delete students. Okay, we want to make sure that those students are, that those students stay in that class. So we don't, earlier, I want to make sure you don't get this confused. Earlier, Celia said that in Google Classroom, you may want to delete students. Here in Seesaw, you want to leave those students in the class that they are at. And related to that, don't turn off family access. So if you've turned it on, do not turn it off, because then what will happen is then the parents and the families will lose access to their students' work, their portfolio, and next year they will have the teacher will have to send out that forms again to connect them to Seesaw again. So please, please, please do not turn family access off once once you have families connected. All right, and that was a tip on there. So what's going to happen? So what's going to happen is no earlier than June 30th at the administrative level here, we are going to archive the classes for you. And what happens when you archive a class in Seesaw for Schools? Well, what happens is work is stored in a journal for each student if, and this is only if, you are using a Clever ID for the students, which they get one when the classes are populated by Clever. So if you have created your own classes, those classes, all that work will be lost. And this is especially important for those of you that are specialists. You know, some of our RSP teachers that don't have classes that are populated, or you know, I know that some counselors may have created classes, psychologists. So yeah, so those and there is a way to fix that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But you know, if a student, if you added this, if you're using the Clever created classes, and those students were added through Clever with the Clever ID, all that work is stored. They don't lose anything, and neither do the families. The families stay connected, and they have access to all the student work. Imagine how powerful that could be if you know, when a student gets 6th grade, they're getting ready to leave our district, and a parent has access to what they did in kindergarten. You know that, you know, so that's you know, something that is possible because of Seesaw for Schools. Again, the families will stay connected, you know, as we archive classes for next year. When the new classes are repopulated, the families will continue staying connected. They will have access to student work. You know, I shared earlier, families and students will have access to student work over the years. And in addition to that, you know, families are able to download student journals. If they want to keep a copy of it, it allows them to download it in PDFs and other formats. So that is, you know, a benefit of making sure that we have our students in there correctly, and that we are using the Seesaw for School, you know, Clever populated classes. So that's going to happen again. It will not take, this archiving of these classes will not take place before June 30th. However, there's a couple of things that we're going to talk about, you know, before we go into things that you can do. So number one is, how do you check to see if my students are connected correctly? So I wanted you to point this out to you, to this little diagram here. Here are my students, and most of our students, when a class is populated, Clever creates an ID, as you see on here, and it's not related to it's different than a student ID that PowerSchool assigns. So these are not the same as those five or 6 digit numbers that are the student ID numbers. So
it's not the number that the students use for lunch. So if they match because you were trying to add them and you put in their lunch number or their AR number or Lexia number, that's not the way to do it.
Thank you, Celia. You might also see a couple of students that perhaps have logged in with an email. Like, for example, here we see the student Carmelo here with a student ID of 1234556@alisal.org. Their work may not follow them because they weren't added correctly. And there is a way to fix them. And again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Or you might have added a student manually, like Diana here, that doesn't have anything here. There's no student ID on there. That means these students' work when it's archived, they will lose that work. So there is a way to fix this if you see that in your classes. And this little tutorial here on the left-hand side, it's a video. It was initially created for our support staff, our counselors, our RSP teachers, but it outlines the process on what you can do so that you can make sure that your students are connected correctly by having the correct Clever ID number. So, you know, there's a little video on there for you that you can watch, you know, from a previous. Actually, it wasn't from a training, but it was just, we created this for our support staff. So there's a resource for you. All right. Finally, one more thing to consider. Just like Celia talked about, by default, when Clever populated your classes, all postings, that's all work, all likes, all comments to each other's work, parent comments, by default, it's set to new items require, you know, teacher approval. If you have turned that off because you got fed up with all the notifications you got, or all the little badges telling you that you have work to approve, if you've turned that off, you want to make sure you turn that on. Because what's happening on here is, especially if you are going to stop using the class, because like Celia was said, we want to make sure that if students are posting things into Seesaw, that you as a teacher are still monitoring that. We don't want, this is a really good really neat feature about Seesaw is that it allows you to control that and nothing inappropriate gets pushed out to to all the students or even families without you knowing. So make sure that if you've turned that off, you turn it back on so that nothing gets posted without you knowing about it. Finally, if you are not planning to use your Seesaw class past June 12th, please email us here at edtech@alisal.org and we will archive your class early. We've gotten a lot of questions from some of you that say, we know that some of our students have lost some learning time. I want to continue to send out work to them throughout the summer so that they can, hopefully try to, fill in that deficit of that learning because they weren't in our class. So you may want to continue that, and that's fine. Remember, until June 30th. But if you are not going to use it and you want us to archive it, please email us, and we will archive your class early so that you don't have to worry about any inappropriate postings happening while you are out and not checking that work.
George, if I may very quickly, if a teacher would like to continue to use their Seesaw Classroom past June 30th, we don't have to archive them until we're ready to create the new New Year's Seesaw for Schools classes. So teachers can let us know. We may not exactly right on July 1 archive everything, but if you have a specific request, please email edtech@alisal.org. and we can hold off for you as long as we can.
Thank you, Josh. That's really important because some of you, again, are just, you are so wanting to meet the needs of your students by teaching possibly after June 30th. All right, so what to expect for next year? Well, actually, sorry, I missed one here. So a couple of things. Some of you may want to kind of have some kind of end of the year closing activities. Be on the lookout in Seesaw, the activity library. Seesaw towards the end of the year starts creating these collections. And by the way, when you get the slide deck, if you click here, it will actually take you to some of these activities. You want to continue to push out work to wrap up the year and activities that can help you wrap up the year. Seesaw provides for that. So be on the lookout for that in case you want ideas on activities that you may want to do in the final few days of school, or perhaps even after the 12th. These end of the year collections are pretty cool and what you can do with them. Now, what to expect for next year. So next year, our goal is to populate only one class per teacher. I know that some of you, especially those with the little ones, you had 6 or 7 classes, and sometimes the students were going into the wrong class, posting work into the wrong class. So for next year, we wanted to let you know that our IT department will populate just one class, probably labeled something with your name and probably homeroom. So just be aware of that you will have one class. In addition to that, all your students will be in there at least up until the enrollment, up until the enrollment date. And of course, that's updated about every 24 hours at the end of the day. So any new additional students that are added will automatically, should start appearing and populating in your homeroom class as it's created. You will also have access to the skills and standards for your grade level. So those of you that have started using the skills and standards to help you, to help you in assessing student work. Note that if you've created any activities this year, they are not affected. That us archiving your classes does not affect any activities that you've created, that you've liked, or that you've modified. So those activities are not affected. And like we stated earlier, families that connected to your class last year will stay connected, and they will be, if your teacher in the previous grade connected them, they will be connected already for you in in your new classes. And with that, we have Celia, who's going to go.
We could go back to for next year.
Go ahead, Josh. Sorry.
Real quick. The other thing about next year, and again, putting on the admin hat, is this year was our first year with Seesaw for Schools, and we had some teachers, want to get that early jump and started their own Seesaw under free Seesaw accounts. They started their own class. And what we found out, I think we assumed, and I think those teachers assumed once we did Seesaw for Schools, well, those classes could just be merged. And we found out that no, in fact, they cannot be merged. So this is where I'm going to stress, and this will be coming in a follow-up email with some sort of bullet points from the slides that George is going through, as well as we really need to stress that you do not create your own Seesaw classrooms using free Seesaw. We know that it might be a little later than some of you would like, but as George said, we've taken your input. We're only going to use the Power Schools homeroom to provision Seesaw for Schools classrooms, but we really need everyone, especially because of that year-over-year family connection, because of all the collaborative things, because of the student work following them. Only when you use Seesaw for Schools, we really need to insist you do not create your own Seesaw classrooms. Simply wait for IT to provision them for you. We understand it may come a little bit later than you would like, but we promise they will be there.
All right, thank you, Josh. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Celia, who's going to close it up here, and then we'll take some questions that have come in.
Awesome. So we've already mentioned before that we were going to close with some resources. Again, just because, you know, it's always good to have the refresher, and there's a lot of information and so much we've learned this year. We've gone through some considerations for both Google Classroom and Seesaw for Schools. And so we decided to link these 3 previous trainings because if, for example, when I was describing today, oh, look, remember that to-do list that I showed you before? It actually came up in record keeping and management. So if you don't remember, here's the link to that particular training. If right now that George mentioned, hey, make a folder with your students' best work from the year, and you're like, wait, I don't remember how to make a folder, then go into this training. If there's a refresher that you need for some of the Seesaw, anything related to Seesaw, we've linked that. If there's some things in Google Classroom that you might need a refresher to make sure that you, what's happening here? Sorry. To make sure that you do everything correctly. We've linked them directly here. We'll make sure we have the presentation up this afternoon, hopefully, on the website. And again, just as another reminder that all of these are already on the remote instruction website under Livestream PD. And so not just these, but all of the ones that we've had so far are on there. So if you do need a refresher, you can always look back to those.
And Celia, earlier Josh mentioned that, you know, if you're just looking, how do I make a folder? And you want to know that, that's in the record keeping management. You know, remember that Josh mentioned that if you open it up in YouTube, you actually have chapters that Celia has already labeled that tells you, okay, you just want that piece. How do I make a folder? And if you click on that, it'll take you right to that piece. Instead of watching the whole, you know, hour and a half live stream, you'll just watch that little piece you need, right?
Exactly, yes, that was the purpose.
And we do have a few questions that have come in. Are you ready? The first one goes back to Google Classroom.
Almost there.
Celia, if we make a copy of Google Classroom, will my students be added automatically?
Oh, no. So if we're talking about copying the way that I had shown you, no, it'll duplicate the assignments. And so this one was the one that I duplicated. You'll see that like none of my students are linked. And so I can duplicate the class and have everything like ready to go, right? The assignments were ready to go. Everything was kind of there pending in draft form, but none of my students are connected because, well, 1, we don't have class lists. And 2, I'll remind you that for Google Classroom, you're going to have to go into, once you have your class list, you're going to have to go into people and either add your students here manually or with a class code. So those don't automatically happen in Google Classroom.
Good question. All right. All right. The next one is with regards to Seesaw. Can parents see student work when they are connected to Seesaw? The answer is yes. That is the beautiful thing about having parents connected into Seesaw. So they will be able to see that work even after classes are archived. And as I shared earlier, if they're in 6th grade, if we get students that go through our whole, you know, education from TK all the way to 6th grade, in 6th grade, if we continue with Seesaw for Schools, they would be able to access that work that they have from way back in kindergarten. So yeah, that's definitely a big plus of Seesaw for Schools. We have, I believe, one more question. It says on here, who do I request for the district not to archive the SDC preschool classes? And this, I'm assuming, Ms. Crane, thank you for sending those out. I'm assuming that you are referring to Seesaw. Either way, whatever you're referring to, please contact us here in the EdTech department, edtech@alisal.org, and we can go ahead and explain to us your situation, and we will make sure that that if we can, that we that we get that set up for you, okay, and make your life a little bit easier. So yes, please email us.
I think that might have been it.
Yeah.
So thank you to everybody for this very interesting year. And I know it's been a lot to take in, and some things went well and a lot of learning, but I actually appreciate everybody sharing all those things, both like the good things and the not so great things and the things to work on, because I think we've definitely seen how people have broken outside of their comfort zone, and there's definitely been a lot of learning. So thanks to everybody for sharing with us this year.
Wait a minute, one final question came in.
Okay.
And,
well,
and I want to go two. Whoa, okay, maybe we'll wait a little bit.
they like us. They really like us.
I'm glad that people are still watching. They're not tired of us. So the question is, it has to do with the difference between Google Classroom and Seesaw. What, they're coming in.
Okay.
So that's correct. So if you are using Google Classroom, you have to create your own class and you have to add your students.
Yes.
If you're using Seesaw,
if I might chime in with a little bit of like early Santa Claus, I don't know why I went to Santa Claus, you guys. I'm sorry. I will say that as of right now, George's information is correct, and it may continue to be correct. However, the district, EdTech and IT, we are investigating a solution so where we will be able to provision the classes automatically for you the way we can do with Seesaw right now. That's not built into Google the way it's built into Seesaw for Schools. So we would need another tool to do that, but we are investigating that.
Oh, that's good news. Thank you.
Right now, you will still have to make your own.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh, for that. So there's that one. Let's see here. Sorry, a couple of them are just last minute. So you thought you were closing up, but we got some more questions coming in. It says, oh, not a question. It's a kudos. Thank you. Thank you, Estella at Frank Paul. Let's see here. Oh, somebody else. Oh, these are all just kudos. So thank you. Thank you. You love us. You really do. So
George, did we just say, we just extend the broadcast just to read our own good press? Is that what happened?
Yeah, let's go back and we can reread all the wonderful things.
No, really, on behalf of this department, we hope that, we know we failed and hopefully we've modeled how to fail and kind of continue learning. And we really appreciate all your support. And let's continue growing. And I'm sure next year will be even better. Josh, would you like to close it up, or is that it?
Sure. No, I absolutely would like to create parting thoughts. I think Claudia,
it's Claudia.
I was going to say had really salient things to say about this. Came out salient. Apparently I'm from the South now. In any case, just echo what Celia said, and George and I have learned and working with Celia to just go with what Celia says because Celia, right? But echo those sentiments. And I'm sure it's killing her to not chime in and go, see, I have it recorded now. To echo those sentiments, every single one of you has made such amazing professional and personal growth this year. It has been all outside of your comfort zone. It has been in the hardest possible conditions to do it in. And so many of you have continued to reach out to us, to ask us to help you get better. And the idea that in the midst of this crisis, or looking around crises, how your dedication to our kids and to growing your own practices are simply amazing. I said it in the board meeting, which was also streamed. I will say it here. Distance learning is not a competition, but we're winning. And we're winning because of our team and because of you. So thank you so very much for all that you have done for our kids. We'll say it the last time in this school year. Be good to yourself, be good to each other, and be good to our kids. Have a great last week and try to get some rest this summer. We know that you will continue to be thinking about things. Thank you so very much, and have a great weekend and Friday.